uh, folks to take a look at. If you have any questions, we do have a chat option here on the Zoom application, so feel free to use the chat option at any time. If you have called in to the meeting today, please make sure that you email me your name so that I can make sure I have you listed as an attendee. I don't want to miss out on anyone that is showing as an attendee today, so you can get your ELA credit and all that. So just shoot me an email if you've called in. Hopefully this will serve you well today. And we'll go on and get started. Hope everyone's school year is off to a great start. I know we are at our house. Most of y'all are experienced lead coordinators, so you will appreciate the fact that Miss Caitlin is now a kindergarten student and is loving it. So just wish this mama well as we get into the school year, because it's going to be an interesting year. For lead purposes this year, we really don't have many changes. We were actually looking at doing a pretty hefty overhaul of the lead system this summer, and due to some other technology things that got pushed back. And so that will not be happening until next year. Next year, please anticipate an extensive lead training. We will probably be going out across the state doing trainings because there's going to be quite extensive changes to the system. But for this year, it's pretty much the same. So what we're going to talk about today are the submission dates, the pacing targets. We're going to look at the updated lead manual materials. I'm in the process of changing up the lead manual quite a bit. So I want to make sure that we take a look at what's going to be in there this year. I will not be including these PowerPoint documents in the lead manual this time around, just because I think it adds too much to the lead manual, and you have the PowerPoint documents already, so you don't need them again in the manual. We'll be looking at the actual lead steps. One of the things that I sent you in the email this morning was the quick reference lead steps. And so we'll be looking at those. Those are things that we want to make sure that you are very familiar with and get a refresher on. We'll do a quick refresher on how to read a lead report. I know most of you have been doing this for several years now, but it never hurts to kind of take a look back at what are we really looking at when we look at a lead report and how do we interpret it. We'll look at how to use the error comments to solve the issues. And then I also want to provide you all a quick refresher on how to use the online lead editor. Again, this is something that you all do twice a year, maybe. And so I want to make sure that it's fresh in your mind on how to do that. And then we'll wrap up with some common pitfalls and some things to remember. The submission dates this year were in the email that I sent out a couple weeks ago with the registration information. We will be opening the lead system on September 1st. We're actually going to try and go on and flip it on sometime next week, just so that we can have it on to do some testing. If you would like to be a test case and send me a file to test run, please let me know by email, and I will gladly take volunteers to run some small files so we can make sure everything's working correctly. Deadline to sign off on the report is November 1st. That does fall on a Sunday this year, so you can sign off anytime that weekend, and we will work with you if you need to wait to sign off until Monday the 2nd. Spring reporting period will open on January 11th and will close on February 29th, so we get an extra day in February this year. And then highly qualified reporting for right now is scheduled from March 1st through March 31st. Obviously, we're not sure what the feds are going to do up in D.C. with the reauthorization of what was No Child Left Behind is the ESEA Act. So we're kind of at this point still planning to do highly qualified. I know that it is one of the provisions that is being looked at to be revised. So we will keep you posted if anything changes. But for now, it is still in effect, and we do still have to abide by it. The next few slides have some pacing targets. These are not hard, fast, required dates. These are just recommendations that I have to keep you flowing with lead and keep things moving along. And the first one is to try to have your first upload into our system by around September 18th. So it's a couple weeks after the lead system opens, but get you pretty early on in case there's any changes that need to be made. September 30th is when we recommend that you have the staff warnings resolved. And that's those things that appear on the first page of each school that are incorrect Social Security number or no courses for staff member. Please remember that those do need to be resolved early. I know as experienced lead coordinators, we get in the habit of, oh, those are usually easy to fix and I'll push them off to the end, when sometimes they're not so easy. So we want to make sure that those are being addressed and looked at pretty early on. Also, by September 30th, you want to make sure that your schools have done a staff list review of the staff list that's on the front 2 pages of their school's full data report to make sure we have the appropriate personnel in the report. Ongoing, as you all know, schools will make assignment corrections. You'll export and upload to our system, rerunning the preliminary audit report always to see what you need. Around October 1st is when we anticipate the Munis data should begin to appear. Last year, it was actually a few days earlier than this, but I will notify you as soon as that happens. We will not activate the lead sign-off feature until the Munis data has begun to arrive. And you cannot sign off on your lead report until your Munis data has been loaded. So by October 5th, we recommend that you try to have as many of your edits completed as possible. This allows you to spend the last little bit really focused on those true certification issues. Around October 29th, we recommend that you, or not October 29th, October 9th, we recommend that you consult with your district KTIP coordinator if there are any outstanding statement of eligibility errors. The KTIP deadline for getting into fall KTIP is October 15th. However, as with the past few years, we have a cap on the number of individuals that are going to be able to get into KTIP. Last year, we hit that cap by the end of September. So the earlier your KTIP coordinator can get your folks into the intern management system, the better. We will still issue internship certificates for individuals that try to get into KTIP after the cap. They will get a denied to budget KTIP certificate, and the process changes to a paper process at that point. But you want to make sure that you've talked with your KTIP coordinator if you've still got statement of eligibility errors after this date. Also, around October 9th, you want to make sure that your schools are taking a look at their full data report, looking for not just the teachers, but everything else. Are there courses missing? Are there contents wrong? Things along those lines. October 19th is our recommended deadline for switching from editing in Infinite Campus over to using the online lead editor. Again, this is just a recommendation. However, we have found that it is always a good idea to make sure you kind of have a date where you say, okay, we're done working in Infinite Campus. Because Infinite Campus is such a live, active system, you don't want changes being made at the school to mess up your lead report when it's almost clear and clean. November 1st, as I said, is the deadline to sign off. November through January, just kind of cleanup task. One thing I will mention is with regards to updating and verifying roles in KESE, you as the lead coordinator may not be the person that's responsible for this, but you do want to make sure that someone in your district is responsible for taking care of this. For several years, we have managed to do a manual update for you from the lead report. Because we are going to be getting ready to roll out our online application system in January, that will not happen this year. And actually, it didn't happen last year because of some transitions that were going on. So the district does need to make sure that they are maintaining the roles in KESE for things like access for principals, for internship, for looking at permissions, and so that your teachers are showing correctly when you run your expired credentials report and your active credentials report. Once the lead report opens in the spring, we recommend that you try to have your first upload in by January 25th, and that by February 5th, you have all of your staff warnings resolved. Hopefully, we will not have another winter like we've had the last couple of years, but from the Farmer's Almanac, it looks like we might not get lucky again. So just be aware that the lead system is usually up and running during that whole time. Even with snow days, I usually will try to work from home. But if for some reason your district is out a lot and it puts you behind on getting lead done, that is okay. We'll work with you on the sign-off date. We will open the sign-off for spring lead by around January 22nd. We have opened it earlier than that in the past and have realized there is a hard-coded date that will not allow those submissions to be accepted before January 22nd. But because we don't have to wait for Munis, we'll open it by the 22nd and you can sign off as soon as you get it done. By February 10th, we recommend that you have most of your edits complete and also that you consult with your district K-TIP coordinator to make sure that anybody else that needs to have that denied to budget internship certificate issued has been taken care of. As long as there are at least 70 instructional days, we will continue to issue that denied to budget internship certificate. Just make sure that that is being done with at least 70 instructional days left. Otherwise, the teacher will need to go on an emergency certificate. By February 15th, you probably need to have given your full reports to the school level administration for verification. And by the 19th is when we recommend switching over to editing online. Now, as I said, February 29th is our sign-off date. If for some reason inclement weather causes you to need to be pushed back beyond that, that's fine. We'll work with you. The HQ dates are not flexible. So if you push into March with your lead report, that's fine. It's just going to shorten the window for your principals to do HQ. So just so long as you're aware of that. The lead manual, as I said, I am changing up a little bit this year. I'm trying to make it something that is really a go-to manual if you have questions without a lot of excess stuff in it. It is going to have the content list with indicators as far as what requires highly qualified status. It does still have the Munis certification reference chart. The new piece that I am putting in this year is a section called How to Address Lead Error Comments. And I really want this to be a helpful tool for you so that if you can't get a hold of me or if you want to try and troubleshoot on your own before calling me, you have that tool to go to and say, this is the error I see, how can I resolve it? Or if it's something that you want to give to your schools and say, you have these errors, this is how to fix it. We will still have a frequently asked questions section. The things that have disappeared out of the resources section are the highly qualified documents. Those really, most of the time, don't apply to lead coordinators. And if they do, we send them out in March anyway. The other thing we've taken out of the resources section is the how to use Kisi. Again, we found that some lead coordinators use this, some don't. The PowerPoint that we had needs updating anyway. And so I just went on and pulled that out of the lead manual because I don't think it was of much use there for you all. We do have a section called SIS related documents, which includes both a chart and a PowerPoint of the lead elements so you know where we get each piece of information out of Infinite Campus. There's also a section there on the extract errors to help you troubleshoot and figure out how to correct those. And then there's a section on the scheduling standards. We have discovered that we still have a lot of elementary schools not abiding by the data standards that went into effect in 2013. And so you want to make sure that those are correct, especially as we get further and further into PEGIS. I've dropped the PowerPoints out of this, but we do still have the appendices. We have a glossary that includes all of your lead report comments. There's a sample lead report. I did keep the HQ notes for principals because I think that's somewhat helpful because it talks about what areas require HQ status and how to get there. It's just a real quick overview. And then the 2-pager that I sent you this morning, which is the quick reference to lead steps, which is something that you definitely want to keep handy at all times as you're processing your lead report. So that will be posted hopefully by early next week. I am out of town Monday and Tuesday doing some other trainings, but I'm hoping to have it to our IT person by Wednesday to post. So now for those quick handy lead steps. As you all are aware, there are 5 steps to creating and processing your lead report. First step all happens in Infinite Campus, and that is creating the extract file. Before you create the extract file, there were some ad hocs that were created several years ago that you can run to check for errors. Make sure that you think through the selections on the extract page, and we'll look on that on the next slide. But that you can select just one school. We still don't have a system where you can upload one school and then another and have them both show up. If you upload a second school, it's going to overwrite the first one. So if you want to work one school at a time or a set of schools at a time, that's fine. Just be aware that you want to make sure that all of your schools are included by the final upload and that you don't make any changes on our website with just one school loaded. The format does require XML for upload, but you can use the CSV or HTML if there's something that you need to check. Occasionally, I will have you send me your CSV or HTML version so that I can look at something for you. It is the very raw data. Some of it is encoded, so just be aware that it's a little tough to read sometimes. So looking at the extract page in Infinite Campus, which can be found in IC under Kentucky State Reporting and then Lead Extract, the first thing you have to select is the date range. Make sure you do not leave either of these fields blank. I know Infinite Campus will allow you to leave them blank, but for lead purposes, you do need to input something into both ends of the date range. In the fall, that's going to be your first day of school to the last day of school in December. Now, if your district is on trimesters and that causes you some problems, contact me. We'll see if we need to run it for just the first trimester. But I want to do that on a case-by-case basis. Then for the spring report, we'll get everything. So run it from the first day of school to the last day of school. Make sure you select the correct reporting period of fall or spring. As I said earlier, the format does have to be XML. And then with the calendars, you can select one or all schools, making sure that all schools are included by the time you do your last upload. When you get the extract summary error report, it will show data errors. These are things that will cause pieces of data to be excluded from your lead report. This is not your lead errors. And these are things that do have to be resolved before you do your final upload. The one thing I don't want you to do is spend so much time fixing those that you don't get your upload done. Now, some of them are things that will prevent your upload from even happening, and those do need to be done first. But make sure that you don't spend so much time on those that you don't get an upload into us. The extract summary errors, as I mentioned earlier, are listed in the lead manual under the SIS documents section. So once you've looked at your extract summary, save and zip the file. Do not try to open it. It will give you an error. When you upload the file to our website, our system will warn you if you have an incorrect file name. So if you've picked fall and it's spring, if you've somehow missed an extension that's been put on there because it's like your third or fourth extract and it's added a parentheses, make sure to delete those off because our system really doesn't like those. So it's going to be lead underscore your district 3-digit number underscore and then fall or spring, the 1 or the 2, and then underscore 16 for the 15-16 school year. If duplicate data or problematic data exists in your file, it will not load. You will get a big red stop sign, or you may get another error message. And you all are familiar with those as experienced lead coordinators. It's the entry CNUM, and then it's got a whole bunch of information about a course. The problem with that entry CNUM error is that it just hits the first one in your file, and there might be 20 or 30 beneath it that you can't see. So if you get an error message, or if you get the red stop sign message, please email EPSB lead team at ky.gov with your name, district name, and time of the error. Don't assume that when the stop sign says EPSB staff has been notified that I know that there's an error, because that goes into a mailbox that our IT folks get, and unless they're triggered to take a look at it, they normally don't look at it, because sometimes those errors are really just internet issues. So let me know if you get one of those errors as soon as you get it, so that we can debug your file and take a look and see what's causing the error. Once you've gotten the message that says successful upload, you're going to open and review your report. Always go to the preliminary audit report first. And this is one of the things that we're going to be fixing when we overhaul the LEAD system next year, where it can take so long for this preliminary audit report to open. We're going to actually be doing it as a queue system. So you'll upload and then you'll get notification when your file's ready to go. So you don't have to sit there and take up your browser time or your very, very important time waiting for that to load. So that's one of the things that's coming down the line. And we're really excited about how that may help free up some resources. So when you look at your preliminary audit report, you're going to use the comments on the report, and we'll look at that to determine how to correct your errors. After your very first upload, or sometime within the first few uploads, we do strongly recommend that you have the schools review the staff list on the full data report for any inaccuracies. This is so we can make sure that we have the right folks in. Can't tell you how many times we've gotten all the way to highly qualified reporting in March, and we've realized that there are teachers that are missing and have been missing the entire school year. Step 4 is correcting your issues. So go back, make your corrections in Infinite Campus. We do not recommend that the lead editor be your initial location for doing your lead edits. Most of your changes need to happen back in Infinite Campus, and then you will need to re-export and re-upload and reopen your report to see those changes. You can do final edits in the lead application, but make sure that they are the final last-minute things that cannot be done in IC. And finally, step 5 is submitting the report. Prior to sign off, have each of your school principals or their staff verify the full report. Things they want to look for are teachers on the first page with no courses, teachers with incorrect or missing schedules or content, and teachers missing from the report completely. When you sign off, it locks down your data and it indicates that you are done and all of the data is accurate to the best of your knowledge. Do not sign off with known errors. If it's something that you know about, that is not a true certification error, that's just a coding error, work with us to figure out how to fix it before you sign off. Because you want to assume that any errors that are on your report as of November 1 will get reported to KDE. We will, as always, from November 1st to November 15th, go through and do as many manual cleanups that we can here. We'll contact you if we have any questions about your report. But that is about a 2-week window with election day and a state holiday in it. So we have limited amount of time to touch all 170 some odd districts. So just make sure that you assume and have notified your superintendent of any errors that are on there as of November 1 that will go to the commissioner. Not sure if we'll have a new commissioner by then, but if not, it will go to the interim commissioner. Now for a quick refresher on how to read the LEAD report. If you ever need to take a closer look at a sample report, there is a sample report that's in the appendices of the LEAD manual. So that is something that is there to help you if you have a question about what you're looking at when it comes to a report. First thing you'll see for each school is a list of their errors. So there's going to be staff warnings at the top, and that's the no courses for staff member and social security number not found in EPSB database. Those are the ones that need to be addressed first and early, because otherwise we can't audit those teachers for accuracy. Then the next thing that you see are the individual teacher errors, and they will say on this page, certification issue. That is an acceptable comment and does not always mean that it's a problem with their certificate. I get panicked calls every year of this teacher has a valid certificate, but it's saying certificate issue, so what's wrong? Well, it's really not most of the time a problem with their certificate. It's a problem with how their certificate matches up to the course. So it may be a problem with the coding of the course. It may be a problem with how they've been scheduled, but it's not necessarily a true problem with their certificate in that it's expired or whatever. So you want to take a look at the error comments on the individual teachers listing to figure out what those errors are. If there are no errors, no list will appear for the school. So looking at the individual teachers page, obviously at the top, it's going to show their certification information. Then if they have any Munis errors, it will show a box for the Munis errors. And then finally, it's going to show the course information. And the red box where it says comments is where you want to look to see what is the error for this teacher. Something new this year I wanted to do for you is break down what each of the items on that teacher listing page is and what it means. So up at the teacher credential information, and I'm going to see if I can get my little highlighter to come open here. Hopefully you're seeing a lovely little red dot. The code right here is just the 4 or 3-digit code. We do have a few that are 5 that shows what the credential is in our database. So this is our internal identifier for the credential. It's also what you will see on the state course code list if you're looking for what credentials can teach a specific class. The next thing you see is the credential. This is the actual name, and it will list here the name of every certificate ever held by this teacher. That includes every renewal of each of those certificates. So you'll see, like in this case, this is the same certificate listed 3 times. The status will show the active and expired status for every certificate ever held by the teacher. The status that you may see are cert expired, cert issued, do not print, history, teacher intern, teacher statement of eligibility, revoked or suspended. The ones that are considered active credentials are certificate issued, teacher intern, history, and do not print. Notice I did not say teacher statement of eligibility because a teacher statement of eligibility is not considered an active credential until they've actually gotten an internship certificate. As long as you see one of those active statuses there, though, that teacher does have a valid credential. We get panicked calls because they see cert expired there and don't look to see that there's something else. So make sure that you look carefully at that if you're looking at the teacher's credentials. It will also help to look at both the effective and expired dates. And that's just for each credential. It comes from our database. The one thing that will look a little strange is if you have somebody that resigns KTIP or resigns as an alternative route teacher, they will have a future expiration date, but their status will say certificate expired. And that's because they have withdrawn from the program that allowed them to be fully certified. Now, the course information, the first element that you see is the course. This is the course number and the section number of the class in the student information system. In Infinite Campus, it comes out with an underscore. So it's whatever your district course number is, underscore, and then the section number. So this comes from the course master, the course tab, and then the section tab. The KDE number is the 6-digit state course code number, and this comes from the course master. Please make sure that your schools have run the missing or invalid state course code list report that is available in Infinite Campus. There were approximately 600 changes to the state course code list this year. So you want to make sure that the schools are using the current active numbers. We did run a report last year, and we still have districts that have numbers that have never been valid, which tells me that these schools are not running this report regularly, which they should be. They should run this report every single summer. The description is your all's internal district course title and can be just about anything. And this comes from either the course master or the course tab, depending on where you put it. The content is the content being taught in the course, and it is generated through the state course code number, or that KDE number. Automatically assigns the content for us. If you see none there, but look over and there is a KDE number, that KDE number is likely no longer valid. There are a couple of numbers that do require manual assignment of the content, but for the most part, if you see none, it is no longer a valid content area. Then moving on down the line, we've got the population. This shows the population of the students enrolled in the course, and each population will appear on a separate line. You'll notice the bottom 3 courses here are all section 05, but we have 3 different populations, so it will list each population on a separate line. The population comes from the student enrollment information for each student that is active on the roster, and then is aggregated into a single listing of these are the populations in the class. If there are no students in the class, the population will display as none unless a selection has been made on the section tab. The low and high are the low and high grades of the students enrolled in the section. Also comes from the student enrollment information. And if there are no students active on the roster when the lead report is run, it will default to the grade range of the school. Most of the time, this is not going to be a problem unless you have a K-12 school or an elementary school that includes preschool. And finally, the last column that we'll take a look at is the comments. And this is what your real lead report, what you want to look for. The comments tells you what the problem is. And this comes from the EPSB lead system based on matchups of the certification of the teacher and the course data as reported out of Infinite Campus. So what do each of the comments mean? That's what we're going to take a look at next. And this is will be the new section in your lead manual as well. First thing, as I said earlier, certification issue just means there's a problem somewhere with something to do with that teacher. It might be a Munis job class error. It might be something to do with their courses. It might be something to do with their certificate, but most of the time it is just a miscode of some kind. If you see the error comment of holds only statement of eligibility or must submit COE, that means that the only valid credential that teacher holds is a statement of eligibility, which, as I mentioned earlier, really isn't a valid credential for being in the classroom in and of itself. So if the teacher's new, work with your KTIP department there at your district to file the COE with our KTIP office here. If the teacher's already done KTIP, that means that their current certificate has expired and other steps need to be taken to resolve it. A couple of comments that may help you figure out what those other steps might be that you will see kind of as sub-comments on those. KTIP approved, and this comment can mean 2 things. It can mean that somebody has finished KTIP, but the district KTIP coordinator has not yet submitted the final report. Most often this time of year, it means that the individual is approved to enter KTIP, but the internship certificate has not yet been processed. It may be that we're waiting for a teacher educator from an institution, or it may be that it's a certificate that has to be manually processed here. If you see KTIP approved on your report for more than about a week, contact me, let me know, and we'll do some investigating as to what the holdup is on that certificate. KTIP final is the other sub-comment of the holds only SOE. And this means that the individual has recently completed KTIP and a final report has been received, but something else is missing for us to be able to process their certificate. Most of the time, that something else is a $35 fee to issue the professional certificate. Not always, but most of the time. The error comment specify content means that the content is displaying as none. The school will need to either assign a state course code on the course tab or may need to revise the state course code on the course tab if it's a deprecated code. If the school has selected the state code of 909999, and there's a few others out there that require that, they can manually assign a content on the section tab. Otherwise, the content on the section tab gets ignored. And this throws people a little bit when it's a deprecated state code. So they go in and put the content on the section tab, run the report again, and it's still showing as none. Well, that's because there's a state code there. So the section tab content is ignored, but the state code is no longer valid. So make sure that your schools understand that when they're looking at those state codes. Specify population. means that there are no active students on the course and the population is displayed as none. You can fix it by assigning courses or assigning students to the course or assigning a population on the section tab. If it's a future course that's going to be happening later, go on and try to go on and get the students on if you can. If not, you can put a population on the section tab showing who will be in the course when it's active. The same thing goes for a course that may be designed for an inconsistent group of students. And I'll use the safe room as an example, or in-school detention, whatever your district chooses to call those locations that are temporary timeout room type places. The teacher needs to have a course assigned to them so that we know that there's a certified teacher overseeing in-school detention, safe, ISS, whatever you call it. But there will not be any students on the roster, we hope, because nobody's in there long enough to get rostered. So you would want to put a population on the section tab showing that this is really a class that's designed for general ed students in the most part. The other time that you'll see none is if all students have withdrawn from the course. And this is where I've noticed that districts tend to want to leave this as an error on their report with a comment that says all students have withdrawn. This is not an error that can be left on the report, and you'll see me put that in my lead bulletin several times this fall. You cannot leave none as an error on the content or the population. That does have to be fixed. So if everybody's withdrawn, you get a hold of the school, you find out, okay, what population of students were in this course when it was active, or in this section when it was active, and put that population. You know, most of the time it's going to be general, but where we run into issues sometimes is if it's a real small special ed population class and they move those kids somewhere else. So just put the population of who was in the class when it was active. Don't leave that as none. The error comment of out of field is probably the most straightforward error, but also one of the most difficult to address. Because it really, in a lot of cases, represents a true certification issue. Out of field means that the content for the class does not match the certification of the teacher. You can check the state code and make sure it is the correct state course code. When you're checking the state code, don't just look at the title. Look at the description, because KDE has put a lot of time and energy into making sure that these state course codes, for the most part, have very thorough and well thought out descriptions that provide clear guidance as to what is to be taught in that class. And so if your class does not match up with that description, that really doesn't need to be the title of the class. We get folks that pick their state codes based on titles only, and it may or may not be appropriate to what is being taught. You might need to check the section tab to remove an incorrect content if applicable. And most often you need to check with the principal to see why a teacher has been assigned to a class for which they hold no certification. And that's where this gets a little more difficult to resolve. It may require moving of staff. It may require rescheduling. It may require an emergency certificate. There could be a variety of things here that could happen. But it's pretty straightforward what the problem is. It's just not always so straightforward how to fix it. Out of population, as you all are experienced lead coordinators know, this is our problem child. It means that one or more of the populations of the students does not match the certification of the teacher as the populations have been reported out of IC. What we have discovered is that that is not always 100% accurate as far as how it's reported. So the populations are assigned based on the students that are on the roster of the class and cannot be changed. So you can't go in and try to fix it by putting a population on the section tab in this case, because there's active students on the roster. As always, an FMD student, you need to put the collaborating FMD teacher in so that we know who is working with that general ed teacher. The problem comes when you see a general population on the section, on a course for a special ed teacher. So check the roster to make sure everybody's got active special ed flags, locked IEPs, no overlapping IEPs. Don't put somebody in a special ed class before all the referral paperwork has been done. But we still have some issues where all of that checks out and we're still getting a general population. I am going to continue to encourage you to contact Infinite Campus with that issue. Up until about the last year or so, I don't think they've truly believed me that we have a problem with this, because we've given you all a way to override it. And so they've not seen the support tickets regarding this issue. Want to make sure that we are filing the support tickets. If we need to kick that override in again, we will. But hopefully we can get this resolved. One of the other things you may need to do if you see an out of population is change the special type. This is the drop down on the section tab that's used to identify specialty classes, such as an ESL class or a gifted class. Out of grade range means that the grade range doesn't match the teacher's certification. It comes from the students enrolled in this section, and if there are no students, it will default to that of the school. There is no place to edit this in IC. The only place you can edit it is on our website. So right before you sign off. Now, the only time you're going to want to edit the grade range is if it's one of these default settings where, you know, it's a high school class, everybody's withdrawn, and so the grade range is out of whack for the certification of the teacher. Change the grade range to show who is really in it. Same thing with an elementary class. If there's nobody on the roster, your elementary school includes preschool, go on and edit that grade range. We should be seeing less and less of that, especially at the elementary level, because there are fewer and fewer types of classes that should have no students on the roster. It used to be we would do this for art, music, and PE teachers. Well, those teachers should now have students on the roster and the active minutes of the day. So you want to make sure that that is being done at the elementary school. We do override this out of grade range error if your school has students that are repeating students with a 9th grade certified teacher, or if your school has students that are accelerating up with a higher level certified teacher. And we have seen that with elementary students that are accelerating up to the middle school, and middle school students that are accelerating up to the high school. We do allow that as an acceptable error. Just put it in as a comment and we will override it. Incorrectly coded is something that you will only see on the edit lead data page, but I did want to address it briefly. It means that either content or population or both is showing as none. Insufficient certification with regards to a course really just means that the system can't figure out what the problem is. So it's one or more of the parameters of the course. Usually it's 2 issues, but sometimes depending on the type of certificate and the way the populations are listed, the lead system goes, I have no idea, I just know there's a problem. So you want to make sure that you look through each of those elements of the course and see, okay, is the population match up with its certification? Does the content match? Does the grade range match? The lead system won't, the lead comments really won't be any help here. Insufficient certification with regards to Munis indicates that there's an issue. That's the only error comment we ever display for Munis data. We've not got our system honed in enough that it can give you a specific error comment there. It just knows there's a problem. So check to see, does the teacher or administrator have the right certification for the job class? Is the job class number wrong? Is the certification wrong? Is it a new principal that we need to send in a statement of eligibility for? Things along those lines. Next thing I want to hit on is how to use the online lead editor. This is something that most folks won't use very much, but it does come in handy when you've got some of those grade range issues. The most common thing that people will use it for is putting in comments for me when I'm reviewing your report. As I said earlier, most corrections do need to be made in Infinite Campus. And anytime you make a correction in Infinite Campus, you do have to regenerate the extract and re-upload for those corrections to show. The recommended date for switching is October 19th or February 19th. You want to make sure that you do not use the online editor until all of your staff warnings have been resolved, because the social issues and the no courses issues can only be fixed in IC. They cannot be fixed in our system. Anytime you make changes using the online edit lead data page and then realize that you've got to go back and upload again, you're going to lose all of your changes because it will overwrite those changes. So make sure you're not using that online lead editor till you've got everything out of IC fixed. So the main screen for the online lead editor will show at the top your stats as far as how many certificates you have that are in each error category, expired, out of population, etc. Beneath that is a list of your schools, the number of lead problems that they have at each location, the number of courses and assignments and staff for each location, and then an edit button. You can use the edit button to go in and look at an entire school. Now, this page is a good page to check to make sure that you have all of your files uploaded, because if you're missing a school, under that course assignments and under that staff, right here and right here, that's going to be blank. So if a school has not been included in a lead extract, it will be blank here on this page. Now, if you want to see an individual's listing, let's say we know that this middle school has an error, use the arrow that's in that purple circle over there to drop down that school. It'll expand that school out. It'll give you the last four of the social, the name of the teacher with the error, what the problem is, and then the view details link that will take you to their individual listing page, which looks like this. On their individual listing page at the top is demographics information. There is an expandable credentials area that you can expand and or collapse if you need to look at somebody's credentials. And then finally are each of the tabs that have the information that you'll need to help edit this teacher. The course data tab, which is where most of your edits are going to happen, is the default tab. We also have a roles tab if you need to update a role. Munis data will show on the Munis tab. You can actually go in and view the permissions for this teacher if you need to see something. And then you can reassign all courses if that's something that is necessary. Down on the course data tab, clicking edit over here by the number 1 will open up the course that needs to be edited, the course section, and I'll show you that on the next slide. You can delete lines from this if necessary. I do not recommend or advise that most of the time. You really don't want to go through and start deleting things as your correction method, because then your data doesn't match what's in Infinite Campus. And oftentimes if you delete the one line that has an error, you will unknowingly cause additional errors to your report. There will occasionally be times that I will advise you to delete something, but my recommendation is don't use that unless I've told you to use that. The other thing you can do here on this page is if you need to add an additional teacher, such as an FMD teacher, check mark the class, enter the additional teacher's social security number, and push the green plus sign, and it will add that teacher to the record within the lead system. So now I've clicked this edit button over to the side, and I get an expanded view of that section. It will only show one part of the section per population. So if you've got to edit something on a section that has multiple populations, you're going to need to edit it multiple times. But you'll see here, you can edit just about everything except the ID number, which is the course number, and the KDE state course code number. That does have to be edited in Infinite Campus. This is where you can make course-related comments. Most often, the things that you're going to need to change are the grade range or the special type, things along those lines. Once you've made your edits, you're going to click Update. Please be aware that the error will continue to show as an error until you run your report again. because that's what makes our system recalculate. So you've gone through and you've made all of your corrections. You're going to select the Reports tab. Do not upload a new file or you will override everything that you've just done. And I don't want you to lose all that data, all those changes. So go to the Reports tab, look at the district level preliminary audit report. That is the particular report that makes our system recalculate. It won't recalculate if you click an individual school report. It will only recalculate if you click the district level preliminary. Make sure to go back and make the changes later in your student information system. The last thing we're going to wrap up with today are some common pitfalls and things to remember. The pitfalls that I want to talk about are some issues with the extract errors, things to do with staff that are missing from the report, the no courses for staff member error, a quick chat about certified positions, and then certification error issues and upload errors. The two issues that we see with extract errors are kind of two extremes of the same thing. One is on the far side of one side of the spectrum, which is spending way too much time on your errors and not actually getting your report uploaded so you can see certification issues. We recommend that you continue to move forward while you're working through those issues. On the other side of the spectrum of that are not fixing those errors at all. These do represent data quality issues and do need to be addressed before your final extract. This is a quick list of each of those errors. Those are in your lead manual with detailed explanations about what they are, how they are generated, and how to correct them. Missing staff. And this is one that takes a little bit of work sometimes to find because it can be a little bit tricky. There are times that we have staff members, especially teaching staff, that are missing. It can be a social security number issue, a teacher or staff number issue, missing a district employment or district assignment. To fix this, to find those errors, you want to make sure that you have your schools do a staff list review early on. And we'll look at the next page showing you what to look for on those. You'll notice my big red box down at the bottom. Often this requires a support ticket to IC to find and fix the issue. If you've got a social security number in there, you've retyped that, you kind of checked through all that and none of that's working, you may have to get with Infinite Campus to figure out what the problem is. Don't wait until late October to do that. If you can do that in early September to give them time to chase down the error, that is your better option. That's why you want to look at these early on to make sure that they're being addressed. Now, when looking at the staff, at the staff list and having your schools do this, part of the reason that I recommend that this be done within the first upload or two is that is before we get your Munis data. And it's easier to find teachers that are missing when we don't have Munis data. So they want to compare the EPSB name to the SIS name, making sure that they match. If it's a last name change, they can correct that. The teacher can log in and correct that themselves. However, if you look at my example down in B, that is a social security number issue. That means there's a wrong social that just happened to hit somebody else in our certification database. We had an issue last year with a father-son where the father had retired, the son had basically taken over his position, and they forgot to change the social. Until we got to highly qualified reporting and they realized, hey, that's the wrong middle name showing up because they had the same first name. And so they had never changed the social. They just went on and assigned them to the other person. So make sure that they check that. The other thing they want to look for are teachers that are missing student information system data. And you'll notice here, the EPSB name column is full for the most part. And so if your schools just take a look at this EPSB name column, they're going to say, yeah, all my people are here. Everything is good. But if you look at these blue boxes, we have some really big blanks over here in the SIS information. What this means for these folks is that they have shown up in your lead report through Munis only and are not there from Infinite Campus at all. There's nothing from IC for them. If they had checked this before Munis data got in, those teachers wouldn't have been there at all, and they would have noticed that they were missing. Now, it is okay for folks to show up with an SIS name and not an EPSB name. That's okay, because that usually happens with support or non-teaching staff. Another common pitfall is the no courses for staff member error. Because this is not always identifiable, it gets ignored. So carefully check the staff warnings after each upload. Try to fix it early. You may need to double check the social, may need to check the district assignment, district employment tab. This is an acceptable error if the individual's assignment has ended after the start date on the extract. What I mean by that is if your school starts in August, and that's the date that you're running on the extract, and Ms. Smith retires September 15th, her courses have been appropriately assigned to a new teacher, she's going to show in the courses for staff member. Just put that in an email to me, and that'll take care of it. Other things to check: make sure the individual has been assigned to one or more courses. This is where we most often see the problem, is either the course is not active and in the instructional minutes, or they're a collaborating special ed teacher or other collaborating teacher that has not been assigned to as a collaborating teacher on a section. Do not have the school change the employee type to support or other. Especially with the PGIS system, it is more important than ever that persons that are teaching staff show as teacher, because otherwise they're going to be in the wrong PGIS part and everything else. So make sure if they are teaching staff, this includes art, music, PE, this includes your special ed teachers, your reading recovery teachers, make sure they are listed with courses or assigned as additional teachers. Now, your art, music, and PE teachers should have their own classes. They should not be listed as an additional teacher. Again, there are times that this requires assistance from Infinite Campus to figure out why the courses aren't coming through. Certified positions. We still have issues with schools thinking that it is okay for a classified individual to serve in Plato or online positions, facilitating online courses, or as the facilitator for in-school suspension, detention, safe classes. All of these types of positions require that there is a certified teacher serving in the classroom as the facilitator. Do not have the school assign, or do not let the school, I guess I should say, assign somebody that's certified to that in Infinite Campus just to clear it on lead, because that's falsification of your lead data. That needs to have a certified person in the classroom. It can't just be an administrator that's down the hall that might poke their head in once a month. Upload errors, we've talked about this a little bit already, so I'm just going to kind of go through this. Make sure you email us if you get those upload errors. Make sure that the identities tab is what's used when changing a name instead of having them add a new name into the census data. Make sure staff are using that staff locator when entering a new staff member, and email us as you have problems. One of the biggest problems is not using the lead report to your advantage. Kesey lead reports are there for your advantage as much as anything, to help find true certification issues when you've got some staffing issues. So make sure that you're working with your HR department, that they take a look at this by early October, to find folks with expired certificates, teachers out of field, new principals without COE submitted. There should not be anybody in the classroom with an expired certificate by this point. They can't just serve as a sub in those positions. The sub is for temporary assignment only. So if we're to October and they're still in there, they need to be out or they need to be emergency certified. K-TIP is not optional. If we're out of slots, do the paper COE and train your principals that they can use the KeyC system for permissions. Reading and RTI are two of our biggest problems, and I promise I'm almost done. I realize we have hit the 10:30 mark already. Reading and RTI are two of our biggest issues as far as misconceptions. Only elementary and middle grades teachers have permissions to teach reading at all grades unless somebody's got a reading endorsement, and that does not make them automatically highly qualified. RTI, individuals that are serving in intervention positions must hold certification and highly qualified status for the grade range, content, and population for the areas in which they're providing intervention services. What this means in most cases is that your middle school or your high school cannot hire a single intervention teacher because they're not going to be able to provide intervention services across the board. Those are content and grade level specific, and usually special ed teachers aren't going to have permissions to do that either. Please make sure that is communicated to your schools. The state course codes, we use those to determine the content. They're used for lots of other things. KDE does require those by regulation. Make sure your schools are looking at the descriptions and not just the titles. There are 2 reports that they can run to help clean up their state course codes. I talked about those in depth last year during the beginning of the year training. I think that information is still accessible on the KDE website. If it's not, let me know and I can get you a copy of that. Elementary scheduling, I'm not going to get into. You all have heard me harp on this quite a bit. Just make sure that your elementary schools are looking at and closely following the 2013 data standards for this. What this requires is that not only do they have to have the homeroom, but they do have to have content courses in the instructional minutes with students on the roster. It's important for LEAD, it's important for median student growth percentile, and it's important for PEGIS. And here's some information about how to set that up. This is all in your LEAD manual. It's also on KDE's website under the data standards. You can look at the master schedule report to figure out if they've got it correct by looking at the period that they have those courses scheduled into to make sure it's an instructional minutes period. Rotation classes for middle school have to be set up with the right state course codes as well. You know, with LEAD and teacher of record, teacher student data links, we'll just kind of end with this, that the teacher of record data standard basically matches what we use for LEAD, and that's who is actually the person that's teaching the class, and do we have those people linked to the students, to the state course code, to the teacher, all across the board so that we have the appropriate linkages for those classes. And finally, integrated science 2 through 4, if your school uses those, let me know and I can send you the syllabus approval form. And Munis will be done the same way as we have in the past, where you will need to contact Carol Buell or Karen Conway, and I'll send those out in an email once Munis is ready to redo your LEAD corrections. All right, I think that about does us. Here's the contact information. My direct line is here on this slide. The slide that you received from me this morning had an incorrect number for the certification division. The direct line for the certification division help call group is 502-564-5846. I apparently typed it in wrong Saturday when I was putting it on there. You can also dial our toll-free number and press 11 at the automated attendant for certification. If you need to get to me and want to use the toll-free number, press 13 and you don't have to listen to all of the talking. My direct line is 502-782-2133. If you have any questions for me at this point, I'm going to open up the chat room and go on, and you can type any questions that you have into the chat room. I had a question regarding the license certificate information. I don't think we have done a recent update to that. KDE, I don't know the last time they requested an update to that. I believe that is now considered a district responsibility after we did the initial push out. You might want to check with Dee Dee Connor over at KDE to see if they will be requesting another file from us. Any additional questions for me today? If not, I've held you a little longer than I intended, so thank you for your patience today. Appreciate you all joining me. I will be sending out a survey about the meeting today here in a day or two, and then once I get my ELA numbers from KDE, I will get that out to you as well. Again, if you have logged in through a phone, please send me an email with your name so I can make sure that you get credit for attending. Thank you all for joining me. Call me as you need me, as always, and have a great week.